It looks like I did. Yay! Yay! I got a pen. What one you want, bud?
Less than 7.
I know that. What, looks like yours. Did you not add any of the slides?
I didn't airdrop that to you this morning. I have to airdrop it, so let me airdrop it to you. Y'all give us just a second if you're watching live. We are trying to get things set up this morning.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty good on the back. Yeah. Who came up with that?
My wife.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, that's good, Evan.
Isn't that neat? I thought that was cool.
It is.
That's my only wife.
Yeah. She's a good. She writes most of the sermons y'all hear. Y'all just don't know.
She knows this.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I got a good one. It's why Jesus cleansed the temple. Did it come through right, or did it mess up? It don't look like it's right. Is it different? But it's okay. It's all right. I didn't. It does look a little bit different on the screen than it does on my end over here. So if it does mess up, we'll just roll with the punches and kind of go through it. I know what we're supposed to have right here. So if it does look a little weird, I'll just black out the screen and we'll just keep on going. We're going to start off with, we're extending our study of Jesus the Christ with our study in Engraving Heavenly Truths. This quarter, we're on week 7, I believe. And so the first question on today's week will be why Jesus cleansed the temple. Why Jesus cleansed the temple. Now let's go to John chapter 2. And then we're going to go, actually we'll begin in verse 12. And so I'm going to start reading there and then we'll go and we'll talk about this for just a moment. Yes, sir.
And the first question, number 56, rejection of Jesus.
Is it?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, let me get out of this then. Hang on just a moment, y'all. Sorry about that. Yep, I was one too many, wasn't I? The city where Jesus was first rejected. The city where Jesus was first rejected. Thank you, Huey. Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. Okay, remember, where was it that he grew up most of his life? Nazareth, right? And that would be the place that they would reject him. These people knew him. They knew who he was. And so it would come to being. Let's see, I'm going to put that right there on the screen for us. That'd be Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. But yeah, Nazareth would be the very place, even where he grew up, that they would not even receive him as their own. There's a lot of truth to that. I know. Now, it's not because Jesus ever had a bad reputation, because he was the same yesterday, today. I mean, he was right. He was good, and he did what he was supposed to do. I guess maybe it was just because it was too close to home. People just knew who he was, and they weren't willing to accept. I've known that guy my whole life, and now he's calling himself the Messiah. You think about that, and honestly, if somebody were to say that today, had the Messiah not come 2,000 years ago, you and I, say Bruce walks in this morning and he tells everybody, "Hi, I'm the Son of God." Wait a minute, we've known Bruce for years. Now he's all of a sudden the Son of God? I believe that might be why it was. But the city of Nazareth was had a bad reputation, didn't it? Remember what good can come from Nazareth? What good can come from Nazareth? It was prophesied that he would be rejected, though. So this was also, again, as we've talked about week after week, a fulfillment of prophecy. It happened on purpose. Nothing happened by accident. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3 is where we can see in the Old Testament where it said he was going to be rejected. He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Isaiah 53 and verse 3. I didn't have the slide pulled on the right place, so y'all forgive me there. The people of Nazareth, they once desired to kill Jesus by throwing him down a cliff. Look at Luke chapter 4. If you look at verse 29, it says, "And rose up and thrust him out of the city and led him into the brow of a hill whereunto their city was built, and that they might cast him down headlong." Look at there, verse 27. That's actually going to show up in today's sermon for just a moment. It says, "Many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elias and the prophet, and many and none of them was cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. And all they that were in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath." They got mad at him. He spoke the truth, and he did it boldly and made folks mad, like I said, to the point of them throwing him out of the city and almost even over a cliff if they had gotten what they desired to do accomplished. Jesus said that a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country. Mark chapter 6 and verse 4. Now remember, we talked about Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. This is saying here that he was rejected from the very people that knew him. A very big reason Heather and I started looking for a place away from home was for that very reason. Because now I have a different reason than Jesus did. I grew up, I had a bad reputation. Folks knew me for somebody that I am not anymore. And so, and when I would go home on Christmas break even, I ran into a couple friends of mine right there at home. I was walking through Walmart, and these fellas come up. They hadn't seen me in probably a little over a year. And, "Hey man, what's going on?" And honestly, it's kind of a funny situation. They wanted me to leave and go and do, well, the guys that were talking to me smoked marijuana, and so that's what they wanted. They wanted me to go with them after they left Walmart, and I told them I'm not that guy anymore. I told them straight up. I said, "That's not me. Now I'm actually in preaching school." And they looked at me real quiet. They all got real quiet when I said that, and they stopped and they didn't say anything. And one of them just started laughing. He was like, "You a preacher?" "Yeah, right." They looked at me like I was crazy. And I kind of walked away a little bit discouraged because I thought, man, they just don't see it. They don't understand. These folks now, I knew that whenever I became a Christian, folks that were in that past, that I hung out with in the past, were not going to, they weren't all going to understand why I was different. And that would just happen to be the case in that situation. These fellas, They had not changed, and I had, and it just could not register in their mind that I was somebody that did not want to do the foolishness that they were involved in. That is, that's going to happen. When we change, folks are not going to receive us. And here's the deal. Jesus had not changed. He was still, like I said, he was the Son of God the whole time he was here. It's not like something had necessarily changed, but his ministry began. And when his ministry began, that is when he went around proclaiming the truth. And not everybody received him, even those who were in his town, the town that he grew up in. We see something about Jesus in in John chapter 2. So let's go over to John 2. And again, we're going to start in verse 12. And y'all kind of give me the eyebrows. Give me the eyebrows if I start camping out on one text too long. I don't want to shorthand us. I want us to get through some of this material. Verse 12, beginning in chapter 2 of John, says, after this, he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. So, the Passover is taking place. Jesus goes into Jerusalem. He found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. Okay, so he walks in and he sees this going on. He sees a bunch of folks that were selling merchandise. When we ask the question why Jesus cleansed the temple, the answer would be the people had made God's house a house of merchandise. They had made God's house into something that it was not supposed to be. The temple was a place of worship. And so these folks had turned it into somewhere where they were just selling things and making profits of their own, being selfish. When we come here on even Sunday morning, just at this building alone, we don't come for selfish gain, do we? We come with an offering of praise, an offering of worship. We come with the idea of giving, singing, praying, hearing the word of God, fellowshipping with our brethren. But we don't come for selfish gain. We come for the purpose that God has laid aside, just like Mr. Wayne talks about when he gives the Lord's Supper, Acts chapter 20, verse 7. That's when they started doing it. That's why we do it on the first day of the week. And on the first day of every week, when we come together, it's not for ourselves alone, but for the Lord and for his commemoration. I remember when I was studying, and I say this, I'm not camping out too long. When I was studying to become a Christian, studying the Bible, the fellow that was teaching me, he said, Jonathan, I want to ask you a question. And I said, okay. He said, have you ever considered in the realm of worship, who is the audience? Because I had just made a statement previous to that question about, I stopped going to that church because I didn't like the music. They didn't have a good band, and this place over here had an amazing band. And he asked me, he said, have you ever wondered who the audience was? And I thought, I never really thought about it, but it's not me. It ain't got nothing to do with me. It's God. God is the audience. When we go to a show, say we decide to go to a movie on the weekend. We pick the movie, we go up to the box office, we purchase the ticket, and we walk in, we sit down, and it's not the movie that we just paid for. It's not. It's something completely different than what we paid the money for. We'd be upset. This is not what I paid for. Jesus paid the price that needed to be paid through God's will so that what he wanted to come to pass would come to pass. And when we go in and change what his expectations are, what he's paid for, then we're operating outside of his authority. He has authority, right, over everything. And if we are not paying attention to the authority which he has and what he's paid for and not giving him what he has purchased, then we're doing it wrong. What did he tell the woman in Samaria? Worship me, we are to worship God in spirit and in truth. That's it. When we come together on the first day of the week, when we come with him as our audience. So we give him what he asked for. Nothing short of what he asked for. And that's exactly what, when we talk about the intention and the anger that he had, was he sinning when he went in and started turning tables over? He starts turning tables over and flipping them over and driving these animals out with a whip. Was he sinning when he did this? Was it an absolute noticeable situation going on? Everybody knew Jesus was what? Angry. But it was not sin. I want to tell you this too. He had a righteous anger. He had a right to be mad. You and I, we get mad sometimes, but not all anger is sin, especially when we're mad for the right reasons. When we're upset and we're angry for the right reasons, even after taking action, Jesus turned tables over. He drove them out with a whip. That is not polite. That is not gentle. He didn't do this in a gentle way, but he still didn't sin. You and I have a right to defend what truth is. When somebody comes at us and tries to turn our belief or coming from a family of people who are not members of the Church of Christ, sometimes I'll go home and the snide comments will be made. It's at that moment that I turn around and defend it. I have a right to, not because of the fact that I want to be a jerk, not because of the fact that I want to be mean, but because of the fact that they're turning my belief, his plan and system, into something that it's not. Jesus did the very same thing when he cleansed the temple. You and I have a right and an obligation to stand up for what we believe. In this country, I'm thankful that we can come together and that door can be unlocked so that others can come together and worship God in spirit and in truth. That we don't have to hide behind closed doors, doing what God is pleased to do. That as of right now and today, you and I have the freedom and have had the freedom since this country was established to worship God in the way that we see fit. And we choose, just so happen to do it the way that the Bible expresses it. Go ahead, Mr. Gray.
The Bible tells us exactly what they're saying. Be angry and sin not.
That's right. Yeah, you can be angry and there absolutely be no trespass of God's law. That's exactly where Jesus was. He got angry, absolutely got angry, but it was because of the fact that they had turned it into something that it wasn't. Again, because it was a Passover, there were animals there at the temple for purchase and sacrifice. So they were just like, everything you need, we got it, we got it, we got it. Come on, come on. Yeah, I can just kind of see it in my mind. And in the best way I can visualize it is exactly like that. Somebody just come, I got all you need right here. Any kind of sacrifice that you might need to make. I got all the things necessary. The money changers were there to exchange foreign money for local money and make change so that the Jews could pay their support to the temple or for the temple. Exodus chapter 30 and verse 13 talks about that too. If you want to go over there for just a second, we'll look at that. This they shall give every one that passeth among them that are numbered half a shekel after the shekel of their sanctuary. A shekel is 20 gerahs, and a half a shekel shall be the offering of the Lord. Now look at verse 14. Everyone that passes among them that are numbered from 20 years old and above shall give an offering unto the Lord. So this was something that, it was set in place that everybody had to pay, I guess, for the temple. In support of the temple and support for it. And so they would bring their offerings to the temple to do that, but they had set it up, like I said, to where everything was just as convenient as possible and turned it into a place of trading and bartering and just not a place of worship, not what it was supposed to be. And the point, like I said, that last point that I have right here on this slide, the point here is that the church is more important than material things. And that's exactly why Jesus got upset. We have to make sure that we understand what the place of worship is for and who's the audience. Ask ourselves all the time, am I doing something that he is pleased with? I do that. I know when I'm preparing a sermon, a lot of times I'll ask myself, is this something that reflects, not a lot of times, every time. Am I portraying the truth the best way I can? People might say, well, you're too careful. Why are you so careful? Why are you so serious about stuff like that? Because I want to make sure it's right. I want to make sure that God is pleased with what I'm bringing. And that's exactly what we should. Let's talk about the disciples now. Why the disciples were accused of violating the Sabbath. Why were they accused of violating the Sabbath? For plucking grain, right? Matthew chapter 12. At the time when Jesus went to the Sabbath through the corn, and his disciples were hungered and began to pluck the ears of corn to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. Now, was it lawful for them to pluck grain on the Sabbath day?
What's supposed to do no work?
They could pluck grain. And I can show you that. Deuteronomy chapter 23. Deuteronomy chapter 23 and verse 25 says that they could go in and they could pluck the ears of the grain, but they weren't supposed to pick up that sickle and go out there and start bringing that grain down. This is work. This is just taking care of your family and doing what you're supposed to. This is not considered work. Plucking the grain was not considered work, but yet preparation and that sort of thing. But that was not what God said. God said that was okay. Hey, you got to have it. You got to have it for your provisions. You got to have it to eat. That's fine. But don't pick up that sickle. Don't so much as pick it up.
John,
Yes, sir. Deuteronomy 23, verse 25. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
it's my understanding about Deuteronomy 23 and so forth.
Yes, sir.
That doesn't necessarily apply to the Sabbath day. What that applies is them going into a neighbor's field and getting something to eat. They could pluck the ears, but they couldn't take a sickle and harvest it. I think that's what the point he's making there. That would be indexes. When I come to thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eat the grapes to thy field, but thou shalt not put any in thy vessel. They could eat all they wanted. And when thou comest to the neighbor's standing grain, thou mayest pluck the ears with the hand, but thou shalt not move a sickle into thy neighbor's standing grain. So they could go through a neighbor's field and get what they wanted to eat, what they could eat, but they couldn't gather anything with them.
Okay.
I think that's the point he's making there. I don't know if that's just limited to the Sabbath or if it has anything to do with the Sabbath.
Do you think that they were in violation of the Sabbath when they did what they did?
No. But, I mean, what did he say? If somebody's ox falls in the ditch, they take him out and pick him up on the Sabbath.
They take care of it, yeah.
Take care
So,
of Yeah.
Plucking grain would have been the equivalent to preparing,
They had to eat.
preparing a meal. So, they had to eat. Go ahead.
I'm sure that you probably got it in your plan there to speak of David and what his men did on the Sabbath day.
I don't. Go ahead and express that.
They did that. They also ate showbread of the temple because they were hungry.
Yeah.
But they plucked the grain on the Sabbath day.
Now, and one thing we can, and like I said, maybe Deuteronomy 23 wasn't the best. And I'm sorry, that kind of shook me a minute because you're right. That's It's not in reference to the Sabbath, and I do apologize. I don't want to teach anything
You
that's
ain't got to
wrong.
apologize.
Yeah, now, I made a mistake one time. I thought that was wrong. Come find out it wasn't.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are a forgiving audience.
We're human.
Yeah. Well, I went back and I kind of thought about that moment because I guess that wasn't right then. I apologize. But yeah, you're right. They plucked the grain and they ate the showbread because they were hungry.
You know, the Pharisees condemned Jesus for healing on the Sabbath,
Yeah.
you know, making somebody well.
One thing that's interesting is that you got the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament, and you got all 9 of them, or you got 9 of them mentioned in the New Testament, but the one that's lacking is observing the Sabbath. And but here's the deal. And why is that? What was the Sabbath in the Old Testament? Yeah, what day specifically?
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. And that would have been the last day of the week. And in Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, the new commandment is that we observe on the first day of the week. And so I found that interesting too. I didn't throw that in there, but that's free for nothing. Let's talk about the times that Jesus prayed. Let's discuss that for just a minute. When we have a few accounts of when Jesus prayed and you know, that are recorded within Scripture, but primarily Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1 and verse 35. Let's go there. Can y'all read that good enough? Like I said, it don't look the same on my end as it does right there.
It all kind of blends together.
Yeah, that's on mine. It's real bright, and for whatever reason, it's not the same format right there.
I always like black and white.
Black and white's good. Yeah, that's what I use for my sermons for sure. Mark chapter 1 and verse 35. If you're there, read it.
Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed.
Rising up a great while before day. Yeah, before daylight. For those of you who get up early in the mornings, isn't that a good time to reflect? I've learned since becoming a parent that the only time that I'm going to have this quiet is that early morning time. So I'll sometimes wake up 2 hours, like I got up 2 hours before they did this morning. I looked back over my stuff that I was going to talk about today. I prayed for the congregation here, I prayed for my day, prayed for the family. That moment, that 2 hours is some of the most precious time to me. I love that time that I have by myself. I'm not a morning person per se. It is really hard for me to get my gears rolling in the morning. It takes me a minute. Tell Heather I'm like an old diesel. It takes me a while to get warmed up. I can go for a while after I get warmed up, but it takes me a minute. And that's just it. In the morning though, it's precious time. And that's what he would do. He would go out early in the morning when there's no distraction. Have you ever gone outside? Well, as soon as you wake up, just to get that breath of fresh air, and it's so dead quiet. I've gone outside before daylight. You can't hear, everything's asleep. The birds are chirping. You know, like when you're sitting in the deer stand and you get out there before daylight, you're out there and it's dead quiet until it starts waking up. And then you get to see the world wake up. You hear the birds start chirping and the squirrels start running. The deer start moving. You can hear it. The world comes awake, but there for a little while, it's silent. It's important for you and I to get somewhere quiet sometimes and reflect. Jesus prayed early in the morning and sometimes even all night long. Luke chapter 6 and verse 12 will tell you about that, where he went out and prayed all night. Now, Jesus prayed. We got some accounts here at his baptism, Luke chapter 3, verse 21. He prayed at his baptism. He prayed before selecting his apostles. He prayed at his transfiguration, and he prayed at the Garden of Gethsemane. Each one of these circumstances were very important moments that happened in the life of Jesus. Now, every moment that happened that we have recorded is important, but the baptism, the selecting of the apostles that would follow after him and be sent after he would go and be ascended to heaven, and then his transfiguration, the moments before leading up to the crucifixion. And then, of course, in the Garden of Gethsemane, right before he was betrayed, prayer. That's what we say, prayer. It's just interesting to me when you hit those high points, how you see Jesus going back to talk to the Father. That tells me, summing all of this up, that it's important in every circumstance that we go through and every day that we live to give homage to God. Give him what he's worth. Give him some time. Speak to him. Talk to him. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, one of the most awesome prayers, prays for the Father's will to be done and not his own. Set my own will aside, and your will be done. Now, of course, he was very real in that prayer and told God in the prayer, if there's any other way. Have you ever prayed with sorrow? I have. Crying, go ahead.
The agony that Jesus went through in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Yeah.
how agonizing it was. I heard a lady say one time something bad had happened in her life, and she was talking to me, and she said, that was her Gethsemane,
Her Gethsemane, yeah.
because of the agony that she was going through. That was her Gethsemane.
We're going to have times in our life where we face hard circumstances. But if we come out like Jesus, we'll understand that it's the Father's will that needs to be done over our own anyway. I pray that, I pray it every day, especially, when I'm praying over the boys before they go to school. I always make a notion to pray that, Lord, if it be your will. I mention that. Why? Because nothing happens without his will anyway. And I need him to realize that I know that. I want him to know that I know that. I want him to know where my heart is. So I mention it. Lord, let your will be done. Not mine. We have a plan. Man comes up with a plan. It's like, what you going to do next week? Well, I kind of have a pretty good idea about what's going on for the rest of this week. We plan, but we're not promised anything. It's only by the Lord's will that things take place. Daily Bible readers. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. I'm sorry about Deuteronomy 23. You're right. That was not the Sabbath. Slap me in my face.
Let that be the last time.